Welcome to today's webcast. This call is being recorded. And now, to begin the program, I'd like to introduce Mr. Chris Flack. Please go ahead.
Hey, thanks so much, Randy, and welcome everybody in our audience to today's webcast, How to Achieve High Availability and Protection from External Threats for Free Microsoft Hyper-V Server, sponsored by Five9 Software and StarWind Software. I'm Chris Flack with Redmond Magazine, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's event, so thank you all for joining us and participating with today's webcast. We really appreciate that. Just a couple quick things to go over with everybody before we introduce our speakers and get along with today's presentation. We will have a Q&A session that comes at the end of today's webcast. However, we encourage you at any time during the presentation to enter your question via the Ask a Question box appearing on the left-hand side of your console. And hopefully, if time permits, we'll get to everybody's questions and get out some answers. Also, today's webcast is being recorded and archived for future viewing and listening purposes, and we'll send you a link to the email you registered with within 24 to 48 hours after today's presentation. Please feel free to share that link with coworkers, colleagues, friends, anybody who may be interested on today's topic. We'd greatly appreciate that. Joining us for today's webcast, we have two really great presenters joining us. Later on in the webcast, you're going to hear from Max Kolomeitsev. He is the StarWind Virtual SAN Product Manager. He's going to be coming on here to do a little bit of a demo to show you what StarWind can offer, but Max is a really great presenter. He's got a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy hearing from him later on. But first up today, we have Alex Karavanov. He's a Five9 Virtualization Security Engineer. He's going to go through a couple slides. He has a demo himself here for today's presentation. So without further ado, let me hand everything over to Alex so we can get started. So why don't you take the floor, Alex, and begin.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. So we're going to begin with the agenda for today. Actually, that's very straightforward. We are going to cover importance of high availability and protected Hyper-V infrastructure, agentless protection of Hyper-V virtual machines with a live demo part. That will be really brief. Then we'll cover high available and secure storage for Hyper-V, once again with live demo, and then we'll go to questions and answers. So this is a very brief agenda. That's going to be very, very productive, so please listen carefully. I'm going to pass word to Max now because we obviously need to learn a bit about StarWind software. Max?
Right. Thanks, Alex. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our today's event. And my name is Max. I'm the StarWind Virtual SAN Product Manager right now. And StarWind was in field basically from 2003 when we first developed and launched our product, and it was a different company called the Rocket Division Software, where StarWind was just one of the products. And right now we're spinned off. We're a separate company which is completely storage-centric. We're just doing StarWind Virtual SAN and storage-related tools now. We're out of Boston, Massachusetts. We've got more than 50 people working for us. We provide global support for our software, and we are global alliance partners with major IT vendors. I guess that's all for the company information, and I'll handle it back to Alex so Alex can give us a little intro in what Five9 is and where are these guys from. I know they're also from Mass area.
Right, yeah. Thanks, Max. Yeah, obviously, we're in Five9 Software, providing management and security solutions for Microsoft Hyper-V infrastructures. Initially, we built our products exclusively for Hyper-V, so we are working only within Hyper-V ecosystem. The portfolio of our solutions includes the management solutions for small and medium businesses. It also includes a conversion tool that allows customers to convert from VMware to Hyper-V to experience new level of virtualization from Microsoft. And we also provide a really powerful agentless and multi-tenant security solution for Hyper-V. We also headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts. We have a few offices in New Jersey and Europe. Currently, there are around 25,000 clients worldwide that we're working with. I think that's it about the company, so let's go to the topic of our today's webinar. So we're going to start with the importance of high available, protected Hyper-V infrastructure. And Max, what do you think about that?
Well, I understand the highly available part, but what is it so specific about the protecting virtualized environment? Isn't it the same set of actions but just applied to the virtual machine world? What's so different?
Obviously, with virtualized infrastructure, you gain multiple benefits, right? So you can spin 100 virtual machines easily on the same physical server. By doing that, actually, you benefit because of virtualization, because of Hyper-V in this case, because of powerful hardware that's out on the market, and obviously you can run, easily, 100 or 200 virtual machines and applications on the same physical host. But in case that one of them gets compromised, obviously the impact that can affect your Hyper-V infrastructure can be much higher, though, because that is going to be not just one server that it used to be before, but it's going to be hundreds of them. So that's very important to keep an eye on that, and that's very important to protect your servers, high-density Hyper-V servers, efficiently. Also, the benefit of virtualization is, great benefit of virtualization is an ability to create new virtual machines in a really fast manner. So, you just need a couple of minutes to provision a new virtual machine now. And what we experience right now, so in case we need a new application, it takes us a few minutes. So it's so easy to create a new virtual machine, spin out new virtual server, that we tend to do that every time we need that. And that actually can cause to uncontrolled VM sprawl, and that may be especially hard from security standpoint, unless you use a specialized security solution. Because when you provision a new virtual machine, obviously, in case it's not protected, once again, it's going to be a target for external threats, and that may affect your overall infrastructure. So you have to really keep an eye on that and make sure that your growing number of virtual machines is still protected. Also, virtual machines now in Hyper-V especially, so they communicate through an extensible switch. And that switch allows us to actually perform the communication on 10 gigabit speed. That's fantastic. And that's really great. But in case you don't see that traffic outside of Hyper-V host, it becomes really hard to control. And you know that virtual switch is within the Hyper-V host, and you really need to make sure that in case that communication happens, you still have control on that. So in case you use a physical world, all-day solution, obviously you get some blind spots in this case. So obviously that's very important to have a solution in place that will cover that for you, and all traffic can be monitored even if it's happening within the Hyper-V host itself. Also, current infrastructures, they have multiple dynamic IT loads, and that's actually great because you can use live migrations to move virtual machines around, but that actually causes ever-changing security posture. And in case it happens, this may lead to some kind of protection issues, and in case one of your hosts is not as protected as another one, that may be an issue. So what you really have to do, so you have two options actually. So first of them is to make sure that all Hyper-V hosts are protected, and all protected in the same manner, and you have something to control that all together. And probably the second option would be just to prohibit live migrations within your infrastructure, but I'm pretty sure you don't really want to do that, right, Max?
No way. Prohibiting live migration, it's you know what prohibition caused, and we all know that that would be a giant jump back into the Stone Age, because we like virtualization for that flexibility level. We have multiple servers, we treat them as a single resource pool, and we can easily move our applications between the hosts. We can easily assign resources for them, so that's not going to happen. And this is one of the fields where our company works on, since live migration requires back-end shared storage for the infrastructure, and this is why we're here. If someone cares about his infrastructure, he makes sure that no one gets into it, so we talk about security, and then that means that you're not really the person who'd like to restore from backups at the end of the day if something fails. This gives us a high availability requirement. So should one server fail, we would like to have everything automatically restarted on the second server. We don't want to have that manual intervention of anyone in our environment. We want it to be as close, as secure as possible, and that requires certain level of reliability. And last point on this slide would be storage security, because obviously compromised access to the SAN is like a key to the back door of the entire data center. You can just copy everything and be gone in a few hours. And that's really one of the cornerstones in the security world of virtualized data center of today.
Yeah, thank you, Max. I think really it gives us a great understanding why it's so important to actually protect our storage as well. And of course, we have to make sure our systems are high available and are protected. So let me speak from the security standpoint of the infrastructure. So obviously, whenever you have multiple virtual machines sitting on the same Hyper-V host, they may serve different roles. These virtual machines may be from different departments. They may be used for testing. They may be used for DMZ even. They may be used just once and then deleted. So in case you're using multiple scenarios within your virtual infrastructure, obviously you need to make sure that virtual machines cannot affect each other, even in case of a threat inside. So in case a virus gets in or any kind of malicious attack. So that's why it's so important to isolate virtual machines from each other. So you really have to have a solution in place, and this is what we do with StarWind Cloud Security, that allows you to completely isolate virtual machines from each other. Protecting virtual machines with agentless antivirus is something that is absolutely necessary on virtualized systems. Now, the reason for that is if you have virtual machines running antivirus inside, they may cause some performance bottlenecks. When you offload that to the host level, you're doing that agentlessly for virtual machines, you're saving tremendous amount of resources, you're saving your CPU, and obviously you can also increase your virtual machine density, and that can be easily by 30%. So your return on investments also becomes pretty high, if you know what I mean by that. So compliance part is especially important for enterprise companies, right? So if you have to follow some of the standards like PCI DSS, HIPAA, or Sarbanes-Oxley, most of them have to have firewall, antivirus, and IDS inside. So all of these requirements can be easily fulfilled with a single solution. If you do that, that really saves you time on architecting your infrastructure and also allows you to be compliant with the standards. Multi-tenancy support is important if you have your internal customers. So if you provide services to your departments once again, and if you want to give them control over their security settings, and you really want to limit that only for their virtual machines, this is something that you need multi-tenancy for. If you service provider or cloud hosting provider, that's a must for you, because obviously at a certain stage your customers would like to change their security settings to modify their firewall rules and do that themselves without a phone call to you. So that's actually where multi-tenancy support becomes a really very important and a must-have for a security solution for Hyper-V. As I mentioned to you, agentless approach is so essential. Let's have a brief look at what we have within StarWind Cloud Security compared to the old world and physical solution that you used in old days. So you used to have a security application running on each of your systems, right? So if you go and move the same approach to the virtualization to your virtual machines on Hyper-V, you'll have to have something installed within each virtual machine. So you're not using any benefits of virtualization in this stage, and you're very likely to fit a stage where that is called antivirus storm, an example. So whenever multiple virtual machines are performing the simultaneous full system scans, that are obviously killing the complete system. So the new way to do that, and obviously the most efficient way to do that in a Hyper-V infrastructure, is to do that agentlessly. So what we do in 5.9, we actually offload the antivirus capabilities, antivirus scans to the host level, and we perform it from there. So you don't really have to install anything inside virtual machine for antivirus scans. Firewall and IDS are integrated into the Hyper-V extensible switch, and that really allows us to do those processes also agentlessly for virtual machines and very efficiently. What I'm going to share next with you, so this is the architecture diagram of our solution, so you can really see that it is actually very straightforward. It includes just 3 components, but does the job really well for all of the protection components that we have: firewall, antivirus, and IDS. So the central part of our solution is a management service, and you can see that on the very top. So this is something that just synchronizes all the security policies between Hyper-V hosts, between your systems, keeps the records in SQL database, and allows you to manage all of them via management console. You can see that on the top left corner. So it never processes any traffic. It only is used for synchronization of these firewall rules and all the security settings. So that's actually very, very safe, even if it goes down, because all the security settings are also cached locally on each Hyper-V server. But still, this gives us a great flexibility architecture-wise. So once again, as I mentioned, the management console is on top left corner. So this is something that allows you to manage your security settings from any place that you wish within your system. Host management service is the third component that we have, and you can see it just below management service. This is the one that actually allows us to integrate directly into Hyper-V extensible switch, and this is a great way of doing that and doing security within Hyper-V. So extensible switch allows us to process traffic on that fantastic 10 gigabit speed, and that also avoids any blind spots, so we can see any traffic between virtual machines sitting on the same host directly. So, and even if virtual machines run on the same host and even on the same networks or VLANs, we're still able to completely control them. And that's actually very important. This is great capability that we have, the integration into Hyper-V extensible switch. The same integration allows us to provide you with IDS capabilities, and you can see that on the right. And as you can see, this nice Snort logo, so we are using Snort as our IDS engine. That has to be installed on the system, and will provide its access to Hyper-V extensible switch. And therefore, all the traffic will be monitored just right there, so there is no even a case when that can be spoofed, because obviously that's controlled directly on the virtual switch level. So that's very, very precise. And the last component that host management service provides you on the Hyper-V host is the antivirus service, obviously, that we just discussed, so agentless antivirus. There are 2 engines that you can choose from. You download the product with the Viper engine or Kaspersky engine, and both of them can do agentless scans, and they're leveraging the change block tracking service to provide you with incremental scan technology. So this is something that I'm going to show you on my next slide. So as you can see here, here's the integration in the virtual switch. So here we can see the virtual machine NICs and ports they use on the virtual switch, and that physical NIC at the very bottom. As you can see, a Hyper-V extensible switch allows 3 main levels to integrate into, so capturing extensions, serial filtering extensions, and forwarding extensions. So Fine Cloud Security is just right in the middle. We are integrating our solution inside of filtering extensions part, and you can see that there. It's Fine Cloud Security filtering extension right there. So this is where we can precisely control the traffic. On the right, you can see the incremental scan approach that I just briefly covered. So the incremental scan approach, we are using the change block tracking. And change block tracking, as you know, is based on the first initial scan that you perform, and then we track all the blocks that are changing on a virtual machine. So this is a very, very precise technology, because obviously we can do that and do that very efficiently by block level. If you scan it with a common full system scan, obviously you have to spend the same amount of time every time you perform the scan. If you do the incremental scan, you just do initial full system scan, and subsequent scans just take you a few minutes and sometimes even seconds before you actually receive the results. So that's much, much faster. So these are all drafts, but I understand that's actually great to see that in action. So let me briefly share my screen with you and show you what Firewall Cloud Security looks like, so you can see that in action right now. So it should appear up on your screen, and the very first component that we're going to cover is Firewall. That's not going to be very long, so I really want you to get introduced and see that the interface is actually very, very straightforward, and all we covered is available within the solution. So first of all, Firewall part here, and you can see that we can easily block all the traffic, and this traffic is visible for you. Once again, all this process is happening on the virtual switch level, so this is where we do that. If you go to another virtual machine, here we go. So we have allow rules for this virtual machine, and you can see that the traffic is allowed, and you can see all the source and destination addresses in here, as well as ports and protocols used. So that's actually very, very straightforward. Something unique we have in here regarding the firewall rules. When you create a firewall rule, you know that always you can base your firewall rule on an IP address or a subnet or an IP range, a MAC address. But something unique that we have built specifically for Hyper-V is a way to create firewall rules based on virtual machines themselves. So this way you actually create firewall rules by just selecting checkboxes, and this is also very, very easy, but also very, very secure, because when we do that, the rule is based on virtual machine ID that is very, very unique, and it only exists with one virtual machine and never can be spoofed. It's assigned to virtual machine whenever you create that, and it's removed only when you delete the virtual machine. So that's where we do that. Multi-tenancy party support right here. You can see tenants, and these tenants are very clear and available within the Firewall Cloud Security itself. IDS functionality is built in as well, and you see you can load log, and if you need to block some malicious or suspicious traffic, you just right click on a block on the detection line, and you add blocking rule, and that's it. So that's so easy, and you really can do that very, very fast within the system. And the last piece that I would like to demonstrate to you today is the antivirus one. So as I covered to you, antivirus is using the agentless approach, and we are scanning the systems from the host level. And when you do this, you actually cover multiple use case scenarios within the system. So in case antivirus is not available inside a virtual machine for any reasons, so someone disabled that or turned it off with application installation, or virtual machine is off, and this is something that what we cover with Firewall Cloud Security agentless scan approach. Even if virtual machine is off, we can still scan that in full. And as I mentioned to you, so we are also using the change block tracking approach, and this approach allows us to perform initial full system scan on a basic basis, and later on all the subsequent scans are happening incrementally. So as you can see right here, there are multiple scan examples. You know, these are actually the actual logs of our scans. And as you can see, for example, one of our last scan logs, we just took 2 minutes and 10 seconds to fully scan a virtual machine.
So, Alex, do you mean that's a full scan of a virtual machine in something like 2 minutes?
You are absolutely right, Max. So in this, yeah.
So I can scan a whole production environment with, let's say, 10 virtual machines of my office in something like 20 minutes. Was that thing?
You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's easily happening. And sometimes the scanning may even take as short as 25 seconds. And I won't be surprised if this happens with your environment if you have just a few files changed. Change block tracking is very precise, and thus, whenever you create a subsequent scan, this can happen as fast as just 25 seconds, 2 minutes, and thus you can really scan your complete environment with any virtual machines, something around 20 minutes. So for doing that, obviously, as we access storage, we have to do that very efficiently, but also we have to use an efficient storage for that. And this is where I want to pass a word to you, Max, because obviously you can tell much more about that regarding the efficient storage.
Hey, thanks, Alex. Thanks for that great presentation. Right, so we're switching over to the storage part of the story, and I'm just pushing the next slide to the audience. And we've just seen how easy it is to manage the security with 5.9, and we're switching to managing the storage and actually making the storage management easy, or even easier than 5.9. Well, I'm not sure we can do that, but we'll definitely try. Right, so what is StarWind Virtual SAN, and why is it a good idea to use StarWind Virtual SAN with an environment like that? So the main point is that we do provide a zero hardware footprint for the production environment. So instead of putting in an extra piece of hardware or some proprietary equipment in the system, we just install the software on the existing nodes, mirror their existing storage, and use it as a highly available resource pool. Now, that allows us to get one more thing, which gives our virtualization environment some properties of a castle. So it's small, but it's really strong and it's really hard to get. And that's how we're highly available, and we can create a fully fault-tolerant high availability cluster with just 2 physical servers and no extra hardware at all.
Are you serious, Max? So just 2 servers, right, for high availability is enough?
I know. That's the question I often get from our attendees as well, because a lot of storage vendors rely on 3 physical nodes, and that's just a different model. So they rely on a witness model, and StarWind relies on the network connection between the servers. So use redundant networking, and that allows us to maintain just 2 physical servers. That's really amazing, right? And these 2 physical servers, as I mentioned, we do not need the proprietary equipment, so you can use any industry standard servers like Dell, IBM, Touch, you name which shop you are, you use that servers, and they are automatically supported. And one more interesting thing about StarWind is that if we compare 2 similar configurations, let's say 6 SATA drives and 2 SSD drives in a old-fashioned SAN, and the same setup in a StarWind Virtual SAN, StarWind will be faster. Just because it sits inside the server, it doesn't need to go for I/O through a bottleneck of the storage fabric back and forth. The latency is minimized, and we can also utilize local RAM to leverage direct memory access to the server, and we can use local flash, and that would be much faster than with any storage fabric running behind the servers. And that's something which differentiates software-defined storage from their hardware ancestors, is the level of performance you get with the same set of hardware. Now, at the end, I'd like to mention that everything in StarWind is managed with easy-to-use centralized GUI, so you don't have to go to each host individually to manage networking properties, targets created on that host, and stuff like that. You do everything from your laptop. You don't have to go anywhere, and that's really convenient. Then, I covered the storage part, but the storage has to be secure. As I said, having a key to the SAN is like having a key to the back door of the whole data center. And here is what StarWind offers in terms of security. First of all is ease of management and compliance, because we do not have any proprietary hardware or proprietary technologies used with StarWind. It can be easily installed in the existing equipment. It can be quickly configured, and it is managed using existing tools. So I mean, no third-party tools, no specific instruments are needed for managing security with StarWind. It's a Windows-based software, so you just use standard Windows security tools, let's say 5.9 or Windows native security toolkits to manage the security of your storage layer. So you do not have to worry about that extra layer, which may not be compatible with your existing environment, which may cause conflicts with your existing Hyper-V infrastructure. You just install that inside the Hyper-V infrastructure. So being inside that core automatically makes it easier to secure everything. And StarWind itself as a software provides really a 360 security set. We support CHAP authentication. We support both IPsec and Kerberos, and we have our own list of the thing called access control list. So that's StarWind side rules of who can see the storage and who cannot, and who can access the storage and who shouldn't be looking at that storage. And we can really configure that on multiple levels. I'll definitely show you that during our live demonstration part. And at the end of the day, I'd like to mention that we also support BitLocker, so encryption on the storage level is also happening courtesy of the underlying operating system. So essentially, anything Windows support, StarWind supports as well, and that's as easy as you can do it. Now, I've described the software to you, but it's always better to see something than to hear about something. We have a diagram on this slide which shows the minimalistic hardware configuration I mentioned earlier. So we just have two servers, and you can see on the lower part of the diagram we have only local storage. Then we use standard networking equipment to synchronize the data between the servers. Those are standard 1 gigabit NICs. These can be 10 gigabit NICs or 40 gigabit NICs or even 100 gigabit NICs. The storage can be either local or iSCSI attached, so that fits into multiple environments. And on the hypervisor level, well, of course, we have Hyper-V 2012 R2 in this case. It may be vNext in a couple of months. And we have our virtual machines running standard applications. StarWind works inside the hypervisor, so it's not a virtual machine. It's a Windows level application. It takes the local storage, it mirrors it between two hosts, adds cache on top, and then presents it back to the host as a single trusted storage resource. And then you store the virtual machines on it. So essentially, should first host fail, the virtual machines 1 through N will be restarted on the second host, and vice versa. Should the second host fail, the virtual machines O through Z will be just restarted on the first host. That's the most basic description you can get, and I think at this point I'll switch over to the live demonstration part of our event and tell you a bit more about StarWind security and how our console looks and feels.
Thanks. While you're switching, actually, I got a question to you. On your slide, you have a bullet that says that StarWind can run on the core Hyper-V. So how do you achieve that?
Right. So the idea is that StarWind is installed on any operating system, but later on you manage it using standard Windows console. Okay, let me get rid of that fractal on the screen. And once you installed the StarWind service, you don't need to worry about managing it. You can do it from your laptop. So that's basically what I'm doing right now. I've got two servers in our server room. They could be running server core, or they could be running free Windows operating system like 2012 R2 Hyper-V. And the way I manage them would not be different from the way I manage these two hosts. So as I mentioned, a minimalistic environment here. So we've got HVN1 and HVN3 here, it is already configured as a failover cluster. So I've got a quorum here, which is a disk witness for our cluster. I've got the cluster shared volume 1, and I've also configured a cluster shared volume 2, just in case. So first of all, if we go to host configurations, we can see we've got chat permissions configured per server. We've got access rights configured per server. So right now, everything's set to allow. And if I want to add a rule and say what goes where, so let's say we create a deny rule. So we add an IP address of the local server or of the partner server, something like 192.168.135. Then we select the targets which fall under this rule. So we don't want to have the cluster shared volume 2 available to that IP address or, let's say, DNS name. And we specify the interfaces we have in our server for that. So we had a test network which we wanted to use, or we had an exposed network segment which we know about, but we want to secure that part of the network. So we just take this interface should not broadcast this target to that host on that IP address. And at this point, if we press OK, that would be a deny rule, and it will never show that target to host on 135. And these rules can be configured for any target. This can be configured for all targets at once or for a specific target, and provide some really sophisticated management tool for the storage administrator to make sure that the storage is in the right hands. Then if we go right, we can also see what happens within our server by looking at the server log. We can go through the events and see what happened with our server. So these are forwarded to the Windows event log, as well as they can be sent to your email address if something happens with the storage. And of course, the performance graphs within the last 24 hours, last hour, and we can use that for each target or for all targets at once. We can see IOPS, we can see the CPU and RAM load, basically everything you may need for managing your storage environment. Now, I'll go back to the cluster settings and see. Okay, everything is synchronized here, and we can actually demonstrate what it is like to have a highly available SAN in your environment. So the idea is that we can have host 1 remotely connected here. Okay, we got this connected. Yeah, we'll reconnect from the other host. So we have an iMeter machine running here. It's not really fast because it's a test bed with just one SATA drive, but I would say that the IOPS are pretty decent. Okay, we have the virtual machine up and running. It's inside the cluster we configured with StarWind. We've got these 3 cluster disks, which are essentially the iSCSI volumes provisioned from the local storage of that server. So we go here. I think it was, no, that's the old demonstration, and I think we should be looking at a different one. Or even better, look at the StarWind side and see where we saw the images. Okay, that's our C drive. So here is how we handle the storage and we provision it. We've got StarWind here, and we simply carve out the local storage using the image files on the local disks. So these are then presented back to the system as iSCSI volume. So if we go here and select iSCSI initiator, we can see them connected through initiator and then visible as cluster disks. So we've got our virtual machine up and running. And let me just fail the StarWind service on one of the nodes. So this is node 1, and we just failed local storage access to that node. And if we look at the StarWind console at this moment, it says, okay, I lost connection to one of the nodes. The remaining node says something's wrong, partner is not ready. See the replication manager for details. Yeah, so we have failed it. And here's our virtual machine, which hasn't stopped and hasn't live migrated anywhere. So it still sits on the cluster. It still operates. We still have IOPS. And that's with half of our storage being gone. And should that happen to the second node, the virtual machine would just live migrate and be restarted on the HVN1. So the virtual machine, as you can see here, let me just pull that up. Okay, settings. That would be the best way. I've got part of the, okay, important functionality crossed by the webinar control panel. So there it is. We store our virtual machine on the cluster disk, so it remains online if we fail one of the nodes, and it continues operating even though half of the storage is dead. So at this point, we start iSCSI SAN service back, and StarWind should report that now it's synchronizing and restoring the connections. So there it is. We have CSV2 synchronized, and these guys are also synchronized right now. So the virtual machine just survived, let's say, a disk failure in one of the servers easily. It's still alive, it still operates. We see that iMeter test never stopped running. It's still interactive. So that's basically what happens with any of the virtual machines and applications in an environment like that. Should something fail, we always have a backup. We always have a second instance of something running, and that gives us that level of resiliency we need in a virtualized world. Because obviously, if one server with 100 virtual machines fails, that means that you've just lost not just one application like it was before 10, 15 years ago. Right now, that means that you just lost 100 applications, and the RTO and RPO clocks are ticking, and you have to restore it really quickly. Okay, so at this point, I'm finishing the demonstration part of StarWind and joining the console back. And I guess that should be all for the presentation, and we're about to switch over to the questions and answers set.
Yeah, thanks, Max, and thanks, Alex, for your presentations, guys. Much appreciated, and thanks for your demonstrations as well. I know the audience appreciated them. For those of you in the audience, if you have a question for Max and Alex, we do have a couple minutes here to get to some questions for the guys. But the first question here, we'll direct this one towards Alex. This comes from James. He's asking, are there any plans to integrate 5.9's protection with Azure Pack? Excuse me.
Yeah, so there are indeed plans on integrating that, and actually you know that there is DACAT coming out in Europe. So we are going to present the better version of 5.9 Cloud Security Windows Azure Pack extension. And if you go to our website, 5.9.com, you can even register for a better preview to be one of the very first users of Five9 Cloud Security for Windows Asia Pack. So it's coming. Please register and we'll notify you so you can try it out right away.
We had another question here for you from an audience member, and they were asking if you could expand more earlier when you were talking about secure multi-tenant. Would you mind explaining what secure multi-tenant is a little more for this person?
Sure. So you know that if you're providing services to customers, so if you're a service provider or hosting provider, or you're doing that for your internal customers, that may be departments within the organization, so you have to have these tenants isolated from each other. That's very important. So this is a secure part of that. And multi-tenancy part of that is the way to give them control over their security settings. So you really want your customers to be able to control their security settings if they need that. And this is where we need to make sure that in such a case, they can only control their virtual machines, right? So you don't really want them to control everything else. So in this particular scenario, you really want that tenant to be able to see his virtual machines in Security Console, and this is what is available within Five9 Cloud Security. And then he can see and manage all of that, but nothing else. So this is what we mean by secure multi-tenancy.
A couple questions came in from the audience in regards to people where they could find links and information for trials and downloads of Five9 software or StarWind software. I put that up on the screen for those of you now, so that way you can copy it down. I'll keep it up there for the remainder of the time in the webcast today, so that way you can copy down all the information. So for those of you who asked for links, for downloads, anything of that nature, you can copy the links down there for your use. Question here for Max. What percentage loss in IOPS is expected using StarWind Virtual SAN?
That's a really good question, because that really depends on the underlying storage. If we're looking at a spindle-to-spindle replication, we can lose up to 30 to 35% of IOPS if we use small write-back cache. We can compensate that loss with expanding the write-back cache and adding a layer 2 flash caching. If we're looking about all flash, then we're losing, I think, 10, maybe 15%, because obviously we're just, every IO gets slower to the link between the servers. So essentially, if you write into one server, the latency is sub-millisecond. But then if you have to write to one server, then confirm the write with the partner server, which takes at least 1 millisecond. Obviously, your response time increases, and at the end of the day, that gives you a little lower speed than with one server. The upside, though, is that we have better read performance, because we can use both nodes for reading at the same time. Well, that's not possible with writes technically. Unfortunately, the laws of physics are pretty solid. We didn't manage to break them yet.
Question here for you, Max. This comes from John. He's saying, regarding the StarWind software, what is the requirement for 2 cluster hosts?
Okay, so the basic requirement for 2 cluster hosts is a SATA RAID 10, then a decent CPU, which will be sufficient to run their virtual machines, plus have at least 10 to 15% free for StarWind itself, then at least 2 gigabytes of RAM for StarWind, but that truly depends on how much storage you have and if you're going to use deduplication or not. So if with deduplication, it's going to be 5 gigs of RAM per terabyte of stored data. And then I would say that the best practice so far is to have a dual port 10 gigabit card directly connecting 2 servers for the storage backbone, and a VLAN inside the domain network, which will be used for heartbeat, which resolves the conflict situations between the nodes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys, for answering some questions here. Really appreciate it. If you have questions for the guys and you didn't get your questions in for the webcast today, please feel free to enter them in the console. I will make sure that Max and Alex get your question and that they will definitely get back in touch with you guys from the audience. So if you have a question for the guys as we're closing out the webcast today, please feel free to enter them afterwards as well. But Max and Alex, thank you so much for joining us for the presentations and the demonstrations you guys gave today, and thanks for answering questions from the audience. Once again, today's webcast has been sponsored by Five9 Software and StarWind Software. It's been brought to you by Redmond Magazine and RedmondMag.com. But thank you all for joining today's webcast. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day, and we hope that you'll join us again soon. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.
This does conclude today's conference. Thank you for your participation.